Good evening. I'm Judy Woodruff in New York.
And I'm Jim Lehrer in Washington. After our summary of the news this Thursday, 2 senators and 2 scientists debate the merits and the priorities of building the multi-billion-dollar super collider in Texas. We have campaign stump speeches from President Bush and Governor Clinton, and we close with excerpts from a congressional hearing on discrimination against women in the military.
Funding for the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour has been provided by PepsiCo. PepsiCo. Part of helping the world live and communicate better is keeping it well informed. That's why funding for the NewsHour is also provided by AT&T and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
Some key economic numbers were out today. The Commerce Department reported the gross domestic product advanced just 1.4% during the April to June period, about half the rate of the previous quarter. New home sales jumped 7.9% in June, their first increase since January, and the Labor Department said new claims for unemployment benefits fell sharply to 400,000 in the second week of July. That was their lowest level in more than a year and a half. Judy?
The report of slowed economic growth was addressed on the presidential campaign trail today. President Bush reacted during a speech in Anaheim, California.
The American economy is growing nationally, but not fast enough. And most economists predict the economy is going to get stronger the rest of the year nationally. That's true, I believe. But your friends and neighbors do not want to wait for new jobs to be created. They want them now. And on January 29th, I put forward a specific program to spur the economic economy, would not have increased this deficit, but to spur the economic economy with incentives to encourage businesses to hire new workers and help Americans who want to buy a home. And for 183 days, the Congress has dilly-dallied with this plan while we could be creating new jobs for Americans.
Democratic candidate Bill Clinton responded at a news conference outside the governor's mansion in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Mr. Bush told the American people that he is the man we can trust to answer the phone in a time of crisis. Well, today's economic statistics confirm what the American people have been trying to tell the president for some time now. We are in a crisis, an economic crisis, and it's far more painful than this administration has ever understood. The phone is ringing, and it's been ringing for a long time. Maybe today's statistics will be a wake-up call for the administration that still is offering alibis, not action.
We will have extended excerpts from recent speeches by President Bush and Governor Clinton later in the program.
The National Commission on AIDS came out in opposition today to mandatory AIDS testing for medical workers. It also said such workers infected with the HIV virus should not be required to disclose that fact because patients might avoid seeking treatment from them. The Commission said sanitary techniques make transmission of the disease to a patient extremely unlikely. The only known case of doctor-patient transmission was a Florida dentist who is believed to have passed the disease to 5 patients.
The nation's top naval officer today told Congress sexual harassment had become a cultural and institutional problem in the Navy. Admiral Frank Kelso said instances of harassment were handled on a case-by-case basis. But Navy brass, he said, had failed to act on the early warnings of a larger problem. He testified this morning before the House Armed Services Committee.
We have had a zero-tolerance policy in place for many years. We have disciplined people who violated this policy. But the sexual harassment landscape has changed dramatically over the past decade. Within the Navy, the numbers of women on active duty and the range of duties which they perform have expanded significantly. Social norms and the treatment of women in the workplace and society at large have continued to evolve. It is absolutely clear that dealing effectively with these changes in our Navy will require innovation, commitment, and leadership from the very top.
A Russian military official said today that some Americans jailed in Russia after World War II may still be alive. General Dmitry Volkogonov said newly discovered documents show that the Soviet Union imprisoned some 39 Americans, and there's reason to believe some are still living in the former USSR. Volko Gonov is the Russian co-chairman of a joint commission investigating the fate of U.S. prisoners of war. His American counterpart said last month he doubted there were any POWs still alive.
Iraqi President Saddam Hussein reshuffled his cabinet today. He fired his Minister of Finance and replaced him with the Foreign Minister. He moved a Shiite Muslim into the Foreign Minister's post. He also replaced his Minister of Education and Scientific Research. Many diplomats said the moves were related to problems caused by 17 months of United Nations sanctions on Iraq.
In the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo, at least 4 people were killed and 20 injured in the latest battles, which took place overnight. We have a report narrated by Vera Frankel of Worldwide Television News.
It was the heaviest fighting in weeks between Serb rebels and the city's Bosnian defenders. Shells fell across the capital, but the fighting subsided by dawn and more international relief flights were able to land. The UN forces in the besieged city hope new radar equipment installed on this hilltop will help them pinpoint the precise location of artillery units. The signs aren't encouraging, but UN soldiers may eventually police a lasting ceasefire in Sarajevo. Knowing the whereabouts of the heavy guns, the tanks and artillery will be crucial. Meanwhile, in the search for peace in Croatia, the warring factions held talks on a ship in the international waters of the Adriatic. The British frigate Avenger has been on duty with vessels monitoring UN sanctions against Serbia. Croat and Serb commanders boarded separately to negotiate details of a Serbian army pullout from an area near the port of Dubrovnik. Under UN mediation, they agreed the mechanics of a Serbian withdrawal, but were unable to fix a date. Diplomats remain hopeful. A successful Serbian withdrawal from Dubrovnik could at last end the fighting in Croatia.
The government of South Africa today agreed for the first time to let United Nations observers monitor protests in the country. The observers were requested by the African National Congress, the country's main black opposition group. It has called a general strike beginning Monday aimed at unseating the white minority government. A UN spokesman said about 10 UN officials will leave for South Africa tomorrow to observe the demonstrations.
And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now it's on to the big super collider debate, Clinton and Bush stump speeches, and discrimination against women in the military. The collision course of the super collider is our lead story tonight. The super collider smashes protons so scientists can study how the Earth began, among other things. Building one in a Texas prairie south of Dallas has become a large item in the federal budget and thus a large item of debate. The House has already voted to kill its funding. The Senate takes it up next week. Among the supporters is President Bush, who campaigned for it today in Texas. We'll have a full debate of our own after this brief report by Kwame Holman.
The super collider is big priority, a big part of our investment in America's future. And when you talk basic research, this is the Louvre, the pyramids, the Niagara Falls, all rolled into one. And where once we reach for the moon above to explore new frontiers of our universe, soon we'll begin to tunnel below to learn about the fundamental question of science, how our universe began.
It has been called the biggest scientific project in history, with a price tag to match. Original estimates of $4 billion have ballooned to $8.5 billion, and the actual cost could be even more. The super collider is expected to generate 3,000 permanent jobs, and next year alone, 5,800 people are scheduled to be working on the super collider's construction. Physicists are hoping it holds the answers to questions of the origin of the universe. The super collider would be an underground tunnel or ring 53 miles around, roughly the distance covered by the beltway that encircles Washington, D.C. The tunnel, 10 feet in diameter, would serve as a sort of racetrack for 2 beams of magnetically guided protons, the tiny particles found in the nucleus of atoms. Moving in opposite directions, the beams would reach nearly the speed of light, traveling the 53 miles at more than 3,000 times a second. At certain points, the two proton beams would collide, sending out a shower of particles. Researchers say those collisions are capable of recreating conditions similar to the theoretical explosion that may have created the universe. Sophisticated computers would record the event, providing data for scientists to study.
We think it's extremely important for a country like the United States of America, in spite of all of its anguish and all of its difficulties, to be in this business.
But despite that plea to Congress from Nobel Prize-winning physicist Leon Lederman, the House voted in June to kill funds for the Super Collider. That leaves the project's future up in the air until the Senate takes up the issue next week.
Is the Super Collider needed or isn't it? For the record, in this election year, Governor Bill Clinton has also said that he supports the project, but others don't agree. Senator Dale Bumpers, Democrat of Arkansas, opposes the Super Collider. Senator Bennett Johnson, Democrat of Louisiana, supports it. They are joined by two scientists with different views. Rustam Roy is a professor of materials science at Pennsylvania State University. He is at public station WPSX in University Park, Pennsylvania. Roy Schwitters is the director of the Super Collider project and a former Harvard University physics professor. He joins us from public station KERA in Dallas. Dr. Schwitters, in simple terms, why do we need to recreate conditions that may have existed at the beginning of the universe?
For the past 15 years, we've had a remarkably successful theory of the subatomic world, what we're made of, what the pieces are, and how they work together. But that picture is incomplete. There are inconsistencies, there are profound questions, such as the very origin of mass itself, that we need to have answers to understand better how our world works.
But in layman's terms, how do you tell the average person like me who doesn't understand science why that would have a meaningful application for them?
We have to go back to history. We trace the history of this quest back to the Greeks, who told us about earth, air, fire, and water. What has come from that quest through the centuries is a better understanding of nature, and from that, a better ability for man to control it for the betterment of all mankind. I see it very much as part of that historical connection, in addition to the intrinsically tremendously exciting questions that are posed by our current lack of understanding.
Dr. Rustam Roy, that sounds like a worthy goal. What's wrong with it?
Hardly a worthy goal for a nation which is tottering in its technology, in which our jobs are threatened, in which our high-tech industries are dying. To think about these esoterica is exactly what's wrong with national science policy. We've been befuddled by all these bogus statements about the beginning of the universe. We won't know any more about the beginning of the universe or how we are made with whatever papers emerge from the Super Collider than we did 10 years ago. So that will make one little curlicue on the end of a baroque piece of science. But to call that an important issue in today's world, where we need to really get on with real science, the kind of science which the rest of us, 97 or 98% of American scientists in the research survey by Sigma Xi have voted to say that this is the lowest priority. We represent the real science of America.
Wait a minute, who is the group that's voted, Dr. Roy?
That 3,300 scientists surveyed by Sigma Xi, which is the Research Society of America, claimed that they put down their priorities. And the Super Collider got less than 2% of the priority vote.
Well, so when you say bogus statements about the beginning of the universe, what are you talking about?
I mean, those statements are worthless. I mean, what does it mean to say we will know about the beginning of the universe? There's so much that is unknown, not only about how we are put together. We're put together by biology, we're put together by chemistry. The physics part is a minor component.
Do you want to respond to that, Dr. Schwitters?
I'm reminded of the situation in science about 100 years ago, when at that time the chairman of the physics department at Harvard University, where I used to teach, made similar arguments. He said that science at that time was just filling out the last decimal places and not really relevant. He suggested that the brightest students should perhaps go into other areas, not into science. Then what happened in a period of a few years, experimenters using new technology discovered X-rays, the atom, the nucleus. We had a revolution within a period of 20 or 30 years with such esoterica as quantum mechanics and nuclear physics. Well, those discoveries of 100 years ago are the basis of today's world. The world is different because of them. The electronics revolution couldn't have happened without quantum mechanics. And of course, we all know the importance of the nucleus. So these arguments have been made in the past and in the history of science. They're being made today, and I'm sure they'll be made in the future. But the human mind is such that it must understand what's happening in the world around us. And that's what we're trying to do with the Super Collider.
Dr. Roy, he's saying that this basic science has passed your argument by.
Has it indeed? In fact, it's funny that they have to go back 100 years and 70 years. Yes, quantum mechanics made a revolution. There was no funding for quantum mechanics. Dr. Schwitters doesn't point that out. Mr. Einstein didn't need any funding from the federal government. If they have ideas, they should go ahead and put them out. These are engineering public works projects. We all know what exactly they are. They're public works projects funded by a community that is befuddled by this hyper language and a lot of exaggerations about the benefits. We have never seen a single plausible scenario by which any result from the Super Collider can influence chemistry or materials or biology. Let us have a simple, plausible scenario from anybody on the Super Collider team to show how their science can produce any possible beneficial effect.
What about that, Dr. Schwitters? Are there, as Dr. Roy puts it, simple, plausible arguments describing what the practical applications may be?
Oh, I believe so. First of all, there will be discoveries that we can't anticipate in the basic science. They'll be of long-range benefit, like Dr. Roy said, probably timescales of 50 to 70 years, and I can't speculate. On the immediate term, there are spin-offs already occurring. The challenge of doing this science draws very bright people from many walks of life in order to meet the technical needs of this great machine. Already we've seen developments in superconducting materials, in actually machine making in an area known as fine blanking. I met a fellow last week who said that we're helping his company make better products that he will actually sell to the automobile industry. But I think the greatest value is bringing together a cadre of students and researchers and secretaries and technicians who have to face these very tough technical and scientific challenges. And in that way, we all gain. The country gains in the ability to deal responsibly with tough, technical, unknown problems. And clearly, in the world ahead of us, in the commerce in the next century, without the threat of war, we hope, a nuclear war, these kinds of challenges will be faced across society. Well, so we're learning how to do those things today.
Let me bring Capitol Hill into this. Senator Bumpers, if that's the case, how could you be against something like this?
Well, first of all, I have the responsibility of going home and to explain to my people what I did to try to bring spending under control in this Congress. And even among the American Physical Society, which is 40,000 physicists in this country, they're pretty well split on this project also. But to go home and say that you've done your bit for a project that's like, over the lifetime, it's going to cost not 4, not 5.5, not 8.3, but $20 billion. And that's in today's dollars, and hardly a spade of dirt has been turned. And I agree with, there's some other Nobel laureates at Princeton and across the country. For example, Dr. Lehrer, who's a Nobel laureate, said the spinoffs to build this because of the claims of the spinoffs that society is going to gain from it are just crazy. And Dr. Philip Anderson, a Nobel laureate from Princeton, said the saddest side of all is to see the Department of Energy spreading all these misrepresentations to the public and the Congress about what we're going to get out of this. And for all of it, I'm for this. I'm for this project. I just don't happen to be for it now. We don't have to do it now. What they're looking for will be there 50 years from now to find, and most physicists will tell you that particle physics has not contributed very much to our society since the genesis of nuclear power, and this is not likely to either.
Well, Senator Johnston, what about that? I mean, he's saying he's for it, but just not now. We can't afford it now.
First of all, let me say Senator Bumpers is doing a lot to balance the budget. He's got a lot of projects to cut spending that I'm for him with. But his claim, first of all, and Dr. Roy's claim that this is not supported by the scientific community is absolute bunk. I have here a letter signed by 22 Nobel laureates who testified before our committee, another 2,032 distinguished scientists in this country and around the world who strongly support this, to say that Dr. Leon Letterman, who was the lead witness before our committee, I wish you had been there, Dale. He made
I was
a great...
there.
Well,
I was there.
Well, you heard him testify very strongly for this project, very strongly for this project. And also to say, as Dr. Roy did, that the Sigma Xi came out with a poll that said that 2%, only 2% supported this project.
This is a scientific society.
That's right. I have a letter here from the director of that society who says first that this so-called poll did not address the question of whether they favored this, nor did it have statistical validity. Let me tell you, I know as the chairman of the committee who has heard from these distinguished scientists, they do support this project. What they tell us is that this knowledge is the key to breaking the code, as it were, of the ultimate secrets of the universe. Dr. Smoot, for example, who discovered the ripples in space, says that this project is essential to determine the nature of the matter, the dark matter in space, which may be 80% of the matter in space.
But you heard Dr. Roy say that, a bunch of people have been, as he put it, befuddled by hyper language about things they don't even understand.
I'm sure Dr. Roy is a good scientist, but this is not his field. He is not a high-energy physicist. Those who are high-energy physicists do support this project. They've been, the Nobel laureates and another 2,000 have written the committee about it and testified before it.
Judy, if I may interrupt just a moment here, and I'm not trying, I don't mean to be rude, Bennett, but Dr. Letterman, he's correct. Dr. Letterman is for this project, just as I'm for it. But here's what he said. Spin-offs would be a crazy reason for building the collider. We don't build it for the spin-offs. We build it because we're curious. Now, $20 billion is a lot of curiosity.
But he also, well, it's not $20 billion. What the
That's
government...
the lifetime cost of the project.
It is not the lifetime cost.
It's much more than $20 billion.
Oh, that is just not true.
Much more than $20 billion.
We haven't turned dirt yet, and the cost is $20 billion.
And they're not even talking about the money that they will put. It's a welfare program for the state of Texas. And we will be putting out $500 million. Every senator who's being conned by his local constituent to say, look, I'm going to get a $100 million project, should remember that that state will send about $500 million every year from now to eternity to the state of Texas. That's a welfare payment to Texas.
That's just not true. It's just not
Judy,
true.
you know,
Look,
the Japanese, last year, I took this issue last year. I got 37 votes. I'll do better this year. I may not win it. Got 37 votes last year, and one of the chief arguments was that the Japanese, who were going to put $1.7 billion into this, would never trust us again if we didn't go forward with it. You know what the Japanese now say? Don't call us, we'll call you. In addition to that, you know
what do you mean? They're saying that they don't support the...
Of course not. And they also say, for example, the magnets for this thing, which are going to be built in Senator Johnson's state, and I'm certainly, Benny Johnson is my dear friend, and if I were from Louisiana, I'd probably be sitting in his seat tonight. They're going to get $2 billion out of it just to build the magnets. But the Japanese have done an analysis and say the magnets won't cost $2 billion, they'll cost $5 billion.
Oh,
and you know where they put the money for this project? In their foreign aid bill. They didn't even put it in their science project.
Well, Senator Bumpers, let me read you something from your governor, Clinton. Of course, he's the Democratic nominee for president.
He's a good friend, but we don't always agree.
Well, he says, and I'm sure you know, he said this in an interview with the NewsHour and NBC 2 weeks ago during the convention. He said, I have a bias in favor of projects like this one that seem likely to generate a whole new range of high-tech jobs and high-tech production. What about that argument?
Well, I don't want to to get into an argument over what Governor Clinton said. He's running for president. He has a right to be for whatever he wants. Governor Clinton and I have been very close friends for about 17, 18 years now, and we'll remain friends regardless of how this comes out.
Judy, I think you should take presidential candidates out of this. We know what they can say. But let's address the argument about can technology come out of this. I aver that everything that we do in the material sciences, the chemical sciences, will help the super collider. It is spin in. There is no spin out. And America has lost its way simply by pretending that there are spin-offs in esoteric fields. We now
well,
must
Dr.
address
Roy,
the
you
real
will certainly
Can I
admit
break
that
in?
there have been tremendous spin-offs from high-energy physics. Now,
No,
surely
I do
you
not
know
admit that. I cannot think of one single job-producing, productivity-increasing spin-off from high-energy physics, if you include anything after 1945.
Dr. Schwitters, can you respond to that?
Could I step in and try to
Please do.
try to make a few comments? First of all, dirt is being dug by all means. We have tunnels and buildings being built. The President of the United States kindly visited us this morning and saw a lot of the construction. Magnets are being built. We have 2,000 dedicated staff been working here for 3.5 years after the site was selected after a national competition. The excitement is there. We have 1,600 professional physicists worldwide, half of them outside the country, are so excited by the prospects, knowing that we won't be on the air doing experiments until the end of the decade. They've already committed their scientific futures. We've touched 20,000 students and teachers at the kindergarten garden level and above throughout the country. This truly is a national project. We're committed to that at the laboratory. With modern computers and communications, it's quite possible to have just great involvement, and it's that, I think it's that excitement.
But what about, but let me just ask you specifically
Sure.
again about Dr. Roy's point about there's no proven, at least in what he says that he's seen up until now, application of this in the medical area, in the
Well, that's just demonstrably wrong. Let me give you several examples. First of all, in the medical area, it turns out we plan to use some of our injector accelerators for cancer therapy. They have excess capacity. We've already begun cooperative programs with the local medical school here. In the area of superconductivity, it's tremendously important to industrialize this so it's available in other areas of society.
Dr. Roy?
It's preposterous.
Could I continue, please?
No,
a
I think
year
you're
ago,
making preposterous
Well, I want to let him, you heard what he's saying, Dr. Roy. He's saying there is a specific application.
And I'm telling him that superconductors, which is my field, not his field, and superconductors will help him. He can't help superconductors. He talks about, are we going to put a super collider next to every hospital? What nonsense are we talking about? I think that these kind of exaggerations, let me read you what Congressman Livingston said in the House.
Please try to finish my point?
Yeah, I told Dr. Schwitters we'd get back to him. Yes. Dr. Schwitters.
Yes, okay. The point, of course, we draw on many sciences, and that's the great thing about science and working. We need these to develop the tools and instruments for our machine. And in that process, we give back to other sciences in the areas of computing. Now, let me finish the point on superconductivity, though. 2 years ago, when we began our development of magnets, a foot of the wire we need would cost $100. Today, it costs $15 because of the developments and the pull of that technology that we've been able to achieve. In a couple of years, it'll be down to $1 a foot. This allows other industrial applications to come into the market.
But what about, let me just stop you there. What about just quickly Senator Bumper's point that he agrees this is needed, but not right now when there are budget constraints, other needs, and we can, his point was we could wait 50 years and do what you're saying we need to do now.
Well, this is done by people with imagination and spirit. You can't break that chain. We have a chain that goes back 2,000 years to the Greeks, and you're saying you can just break it? It won't start up again.
No, the
real
chain
question
does not
before
lead
the
to
country today
The chain does not lead to particle physics. It leads to chemistry, it leads to materials. I do not think there's any chain between the Greeks and superconducting supercolliders. The chain is to real science, which helps the real people out there, and to claim that this kind of science has any relevance to any part of science, leave alone to society, is the most egregious exaggeration that one can conceive of.
Well, all I can say is you're disagreed with by many distinguished Nobel laureates.
Indeed, I love it. They're just Nobel laureates in physics. Who cares about them?
All right, just a moment. We've got less than a minute here. Senator Johnston, what is your prediction at this point of the Senate on the superconductor?
I think
super collider.
Win this.
I'm sorry.
Look, most scientists in this country understand that this is the most important science project in America. It's not the biggest. It's not nearly the biggest, but it's the most important because this is the key to cosmology, the key to understanding the basic forces of nature, to understand the particles of nature, and I think we're going to win.
And Senator Bumpers?
I want to make one other point. I think that I will probably not prevail. After all, I have Lloyd Benson, who's chairman of the Finance Committee, Phil Graham, who's chairman of the Republican Senate Campaign Committee, and Senator Johnson, chairman of the Energy Committee. But I want to make this point, Judy, and that is we can only fund 25% of the applications for medical research at the National Institutes of Health. I sit on their Appropriations Committee. When I think about all the good grants that we could be making that this is going to squeeze out, and I'm talking about immediate paybacks in cancer research, leukemia, AIDS, you name it.
All right.
Well, let me just say...
We're going to have to leave it there, gentlemen. We thank you all for being with us.
Thank you.
Still to come on the NewsHour tonight, On the Stump with candidates Clinton and Bush and discrimination against women in the military. One of our tools for covering this year's presidential campaign has been the stump speech. We used it extensively during the primary season, and we resume it tonight with a pair of Clinton and Bush speeches. Governor Clinton's is first. The 1992 Democratic nominee made it yesterday in New Orleans, site of the 1988 Republican National Convention.
Today I have come here to the Superdome, to the spot where that trail of broken promises and violated trust began. George Bush has talked a great deal about trust lately. Today I was going to talk to you about that very famous phrase that George Bush made in this stadium 4 years ago. Read my lips. I was going to talk to you about his promise of 15 million new jobs in the first 4 years, a promise that is 14.5 million jobs short. A promise of a kinder, gentler nation. A promise that has been savaged by the political tactics and the division of this own administration. About the only thing we can really trust this administration to do is to give us 4 more years of the same failed economic policies. But yesterday, something happened that goes beyond even the trust issue and the gall of this administration to hurl the word trust at its opponents. It's beyond broken promises, and it's about the acceptance of responsibility by the president. For yesterday, on the day when consumer confidence plunged to all-time lows, when home buying is going down and unemployment is going up, Mr. Bush sent his leading economic advisor to Capitol Hill to deliver a message to an anxious people. Speaking on behalf of the president, Richard Darman denied that the president bears any responsibility whatever for the sluggish, stagnant economy. Mr. Darman pointed the finger of blame everywhere but at the Oval Office. Listen to this. The president's chief economic advisor, when asked for an explanation of why we had the 3 slowest years of economic performance in 50 years since the Great Depression, did the following things. He blamed the Federal Reserve for the slow growth of the money supply. He blamed the nation's lenders for the credit crunch. He blamed Saddam Hussein for the invasion of Kuwait, which is good blame, but hardly the cause of our economic problems here at home. And he blamed Congress for refusing to enact Mr. Bush's economic program, a limited version of trickle-down, which was cooked up for election year after 3 years of no action at all. 4 years ago, this president promised 15 million new jobs, no new taxes, and a kinder, gentler nation. But most important, he promised to be president, to accept responsibility. And I quote, he said that he saw life in terms of, quote, missions defined and missions completed. The mission was in America, and I quote, moving forward, always forward. 4 years later, we're moving backward. Most Americans are working harder for less money than they were making 10 years ago. Unemployment now numbers 10 million Americans. 10% of our people are on food stamps. Other countries' economies are growing faster than ours. Since 1980 and the beginning of trickle-down, we've gone from first to 13th in the world in wages. We are not moving forward, always forward. And all Mr. Bush has to offer is the politics of blame and more of the same. He is still in the grip of a failed idea, still believing the only way to make an economy grow in a tough global environment is to cut taxes on the wealthiest 1%, raise them on the middle class, let the deficit explode, reduce investment in our future, and stay out of the economic battleground with other nations. Every major economy in the world has a national economic strategy but the United States of America. He still believes that when it comes to offering opportunity for ordinary Americans, the best policy for the government is to do nothing. He still believes that our top economic priority ought to be an across-the-board, short-term capital gains tax cut for the wealthiest Americans. A tax cut that gives millionaires an average benefit of $100,000 and gives folks earning $50,000 a year or less an average of $30. A tax cut that isn't targeted to long-term investment and activities that create jobs and emphasize new technologies. A tax cut just like the past 12 years of windfalls for the wealthy without jobs for ordinary Americans. Let's face it, when Mr. Bush stood here 4 years ago and said, "Read my lips, no new taxes," what he meant to say was, no new taxes for the rich. So I guess that this president actually vetoed an economic package passed by Congress this year and fashioned, among others, by Senator Lloyd Bentsen of Texas, a pro-business Democrat, that included much of what Mr. Bush says he wanted, and even more. An investment tax credit for new plant and equipment, research and development tax credits to keep us ahead in the race for new technologies, and other investments to get this economy going. Why did he veto the bill? Because it paid for those tax incentives by raising taxes on the top 1% of Americans whose taxes have gone down for the last 10 years, and because it didn't include the short-term, across-the-board capital gains tax cuts. We have disagreements about the economy, but the main point I want to make to you today is that beyond the trust issue, beyond the broken promises, beyond the bad economic policies, there is underneath all this an even more fundamental issue, and that is the failure of the president to assume responsibility for the future of this country. He has demonstrated that he doesn't have a plan to get the economy moving again, but I do. Put the American people first, invest in their potential, in their jobs, their education, their health care, make government a partner with business and labor and education, help America compete and win in the global economy. Don't read my lips, read my plan. Give up the idea of a capital gains tax cut that doesn't distinguish between short-term investments in speculation and long-term investments in new technologies and new jobs. Make America the best educated, best trained, best paid workforce in the world, linked by the world's best systems of transportation and communications. Invest in civilian research and development. Turn American innovation in the laboratories into American jobs in the factories. Open the doors of college opportunity to all Americans. Take on health care cost increases, control health care costs, and provide a basic package of affordable health care to every family in this country. Reinvest every last dollar of defense cuts and retraining defense workers, retooling defense plants, and reinvesting in an American economy for the 21st century. Rebuild our cities, our suburbs, our rural areas. Ask the wealthiest 1% of Americans to pay their fair share of taxes again, not to soak the rich, but to keep from drowning the middle class, so that we can all go forward together. My fellow Americans, we didn't get into this mess overnight. We won't get out of it overnight. But we won't get out of it at all unless we change. Unless we abandon trickle-down economics, not in favor of old tax and spend and divide the pie economics, but in favor of putting our people first and helping America to compete and win in the world economy. We know that investment economics works. We know that when business and labor and education and government are on the same side, working for opportunity in the world, it works. The people of the United States are hurting. They need a president who will do what George Bush once promised he would do: use the power of the presidency to help people. If he won't do it, I know someone who will. Thank you very much.
The economy was also a major theme of President Bush's speech. He delivered it this morning to employees of the Super Collider in Waxahachie, Texas.
I come here to talk just a little bit about what we need to do to prepare for the economy of the 21st century. I'd like to start with a story, not about the economy, but football. A story about a freshman who walked out onto the field over at SMU for his first football practice. He told the coach, "Look, I can throw the ball 60 yards in a perfect spiral. I can run the 40 in 4.4. My punts usually carry 75 yards into the wind." Coach looked at this guy. He said, "Kid, everybody has a weakness. What's yours?" And this freshman said, "Well, some people might tell you I have a tendency to exaggerate a little bit." Well, when we look at our economy, we should resist the urge to exaggerate our problems. And sure, we face some very stiff challenges. But let's not forget a few facts. We are the world's largest economy. No other nation sells more products outside its borders. Exports tremendously high. Inflation is the lowest in 2 decades, and if you want to talk to the world's most productive workers, you don't have to brush up on your Japanese or your German. The dream team of workers can be found right here in the United States of America. So the question today is not, can America compete? We know we can do that. The question is, how do we stay number one and share our prosperity with more Americans and create more jobs for the American worker? First, we face some short-term challenges. This morning, the new economic numbers came out. They were released, telling you something you probably can pick up from conversations down at the local hardware store. The economy is growing, but it's got to grow faster. The economy grew at, 2.9% in the first quarter, and now that was stronger than originally reported, but only 1.4% in the second. Housing sales, though, were much stronger than expected, up 8% in June. But overall, while the national economy is still growing, it is not growing fast enough. And now economists are going to tell you that this kind of uneven growth is not unusual. Since World War II, the first year of every recovery has shown the same pattern, with one quarter up and the next quarter down a little bit. Most of the economists, blue chip economists, predict that the economy is going to get stronger the rest of the year. And I believe that they're right. But we have got to act now to guarantee that. On January 29th, I put forward a specific program to create new jobs with incentives to encourage businesses to hire new workers and help Americans who want to buy a new home. And if that plan was in place, it would have been creating almost 15,000 new jobs a day, over 500,000 jobs since February. And for 183 days, the Congress has dillied and dallied while too many Americans are looking for work. And they have made some progress, but we need this program of growth incentives passed right now. And I hope you and all of these people will join me. I hope you'll join me in reminding Congress that we can't wait another 183 days. This sign is right. We, the people, need jobs, and we need to stimulate this economy and get those jobs. So help me pass that growth program. No more holding the American economy hostage to politics. Vote for this economic recovery program and put more Americans to work now. Now, that's the short-term program. But the real question on Americans' minds is, what about 5 years from now? What about 10 years, 20? Will America still be the world's leading economy? And that's the question that I want to just focus on in this very special place this morning. It's fashionable this year for people to talk about change, about preparing for the future, but for the past 3 years, without a lot of hype or fanfare, we've put forward a series of dramatic ideas to change America so that we will win in the new economic Olympics. From our unprecedented effort to open up new markets to our products, to our program to make our grade and elementary schools as great as our colleges, from proposed record increases in basic laboratory research, to new ways to help our companies get ideas from the laboratory to the marketplace, from new incentives for American businessmen and women to new efforts to rip away the regulations that hinder innovation. And from top to bottom, our entire program is designed to build America for the 21st century. Now, some advocate a very different approach. They want to erect protectionist walls around our economy, and they suggest that government should invest directly in industry, and that maybe it's time we try to have having some guy in Washington pick economic winners and losers. I don't trust that approach. I trust our businessmen and women to create and innovate, and I trust our workers to perform, and I trust you, our best researchers and scientists, to lead America to a bigger and brighter future. All you need is some tools, and that's what our programs provide. First, in an age when knowledge is king, we want Americans to wear the crown. And I admit I am very proud of our young people's domination in swimming and basketball. But by the year 2000, I want our kids to be champions, not just in the pool and on the court. I want them to be #1 in the math class and in the science lab. Our second priority is to extend America's heritage as the world's leader in technology. The new industries that I've mentioned this morning will potentially create millions of new jobs. We don't want them nurtured in Germany or Japan. We want them built here in Texas, here in America. The programs that we put forward to build America are all prejudiced, yes. They are prejudiced to the future, loyal only to our children. But we can make this investment without new taxes or budget-busting spending today. Human imagination is still our compass, and human ingenuity and yearning for progress our only power. And to those who would sacrifice tomorrow for today, I say trust in America's future. Trust in America's incredible capacity for renewal and innovation. And trust in the spirit that is here today. For ours is an eternal voyage to greatness, and each and every one of you is a part of that voyage. Thank you for listening, and may God bless Texas, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Next tonight, an update on women in the military. Today, the House Armed Services Committee called up the chiefs of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines to find out how the services are dealing with allegations of sexual discrimination, harassment, and even abuse. The latter issues have become more explosive since reports surfaced that Navy aviators assaulted several women, including some fellow officers at an aviators convention. Our report was prepared by congressional correspondent Kwame Holman.
The so-called tailhook scandal, the aviators convention last fall where assaults on women allegedly took place, was not officially the subject of the hearing, but it clearly was on many minds.
Until tailhook, we dealt too often with sexual harassment at the local level, one case at a time, rather than understanding it as a cultural issue that had to be addressed throughout the Navy. No one regrets more than I that it took an incident of this magnitude to focus our attention and our best efforts on correcting what clearly is an institutional problem.
The hearing on sexual harassment in the military quickly focused on the ongoing debate over the ban on women in combat. Armed Services Committee Chairman Les Aspin.
One of the points that all of the witnesses agreed to yesterday and came up several times during the testimony yesterday was the fact that they thought that the combat exclusion was at the root of part of the problem here. That the fact that when women in a combat are not admitted into the combat, excluded from combat, that they're therefore second-class citizens, and therefore what that means is that an attitude pervades in the military that they are second-class citizens, and therefore it is at least fair game to treat them with discrimination. Not sexual harassment, doesn't justify sexual harassment, but it does, in effect, condone discrimination.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I believe the combat exclusion law is discrimination against women. And second, that it works to their disadvantage in a career context. As Congresswoman Schroeder said, you don't see any women at the table here. And it may well be because they have been denied this experience of active participation in combat. I haven't changed my mind. I have thought about it since the sex harassment problems popped up, and I still think it is not a good idea for me to have to order women into combat. Combat is about killing people. And I'm afraid that even though logic tells us that women can do that as well as men, I have a very traditional attitude about wives and mothers and daughters being ordered to kill people.
Combat, in the sense that we usually associate with the direct combat role, is looking another human being in the eye and killing him. And it's not a pleasant job, and oftentimes it's not done with a precision-guided munition in all cases. It sometimes is done with your hands, it's done with a shovel, and it's done at close range, and it's not good. It's debasing. And it's something that I would not want to see women involved in, and for which I do not believe, and I'm grateful that this is my perception, that women are suited to do.
I really worry about where women are in the military. I hear that if you are a killer, you're therefore, it's debasing, so you must be debased. Does that mean that we're going to just stipulate men are debased, so this is okay? I don't think they're that debased. I think they can still treat women, whether or not they're in a combat category, with some respect. I remember the military that was the officer and the gentleman. We hear from young women how they're terrified to come forward and say these things because of this ability of the accusers to be able to fight back and fight back very powerfully. I know the gentleman from Virginia tends to think that it's the women who are doing the men in. Many of the women, I think, by these statistics, have been done in by the military by trying to solve this.
Representative Ike Skelton returned to the sexual attacks by male Navy flyers alleged in the tailhook incident. He asked the military commanders whether the culture shared by male aviators may lead them to commit sexual misconduct.
What is there, if anything, in the culture or the psychology of those who fly that makes them different regarding incidents of this sort.
I think that naval aviators, because of the difficulty and the danger of coming aboard ship, tend to think of themselves maybe as the ones that are even farther out on the edge of the envelope than anybody else. So now some of this, as people mature over time, it gets a leavening of common sense, but by and large, I like lieutenants that feel this way. They need supervision. That's why we have majors and lieutenant colonels. But if a person as a lieutenant or a junior captain isn't really kind of working at the edge of the envelope, then he may have limited potential as a warrior from my personal observation. So I don't know if it's built into the culture. I guess people are attracted to it who have that kind of feeling, and so that's what makes supervision so important. What happened at Tailhook was something that you might expect of a bunch of lieutenants who get together and have too much to drink, and the tragedy of it was that there wasn't a lieutenant colonel there to put his foot down. That's the thing that I'm not speaking for Frank here, but I'm sure that occurred to all of us, is that that's the kind of activity that some mature person should have stepped in and stopped.
Some members of the Armed Services panel complained that the investigation into the Tailhook scandal, said to involve dozens of Navy flyers, has named none of them 10 months after the alleged incident. Sources in the Defense Department, which took over the probe from the Navy, said today a determination is expected within 2 months.
Again, the major story of this Thursday was the economy. The gross domestic product rose just 1.4% the second quarter of the year. Good night, Judy.
Good night, Jim. That's our news hour for tonight. I'm Judy Woodruff. Thank you and good night.
Part of helping the world live and communicate better is keeping it well informed. That's why funding for the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour is provided by AT&T. And by PepsiCo. PepsiCo. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And viewers like you.
This is PBS.
Funding for local broadcast of the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour has been provided by Davis Wright Tremaine, a law firm serving businesses and individuals from offices in Oregon, Washington, California, Idaho, Alaska, and Washington.
I take 1 teaspoonful of arsenic, then add half a teaspoon